On the one hand, when we talk about spirituality, when we bring up this term, spirituality or the spiritual reality, it seems to imply the quality of love or to be related to somehow the quality of love. And then, in addition to that, when we bring up the term spiritual or spirituality, um, it implies a kind of a realm or a level of reality that is above or beyond space and time. So, if both of these are related to spirituality, love on the one hand, and a reality beyond space and time on the other hand, so how does that work together? What's the connection between these concepts? This is going to be our challenge for today. And believe it or not, it's actually easier to start with space and time. So that's where we're going to start. Um, I will be going into a little bit of findings from physics. And just to tell you in advance, this is not a physics lesson, and I'm not a physics professor. This will be exploring the Kabbalistic view on all of these concepts, of course, but it is worthwhile for us to start from a few findings from physics that are relevant to this discussion, as that's going to create some context for us that we can then build upon. All right, so let's start with space and time, and then we'll gradually, hopefully, get to see how all of that is connected to what we refer to as love. So, intuitively, we feel like time and space are sort of like the stage where everything happens, the place where everything happens, the stage on top of which everything that we can think of that has ever happened and will happen is happening. So whether it's the Big Bang that is said to have happened almost 14 billion years ago, or the formation of the first stars in the cosmos, the formation of our solar system, the formation of planet Earth, the dinosaurs on planet Earth, human evolution, all of that and everything in between seems to be happening on the stage that we can call time and space. So there's three axes of space and one dimension of time, and it seems to be where everything is happening. This is sort of intuitive for us, but it's also has been the dominant scientific paradigm for a long, long time. Isaac Newton, about 400 years ago, for him, he is considered the father of modern physics, and for him, time and space were absolute and independent of each other, meaning they are there, they exist, they're outside of us, they exist whether we are there to perceive them or not, and they're also independent of each other. There's time, there's space, they both exist regardless of us, and they have their own domains. They're independent of each other. Later came Einstein, and he unified the concepts of space and time into a single sort of continuum, and that gave birth to the concept of space-time. Space-time, essentially space and time grouped together. So Einstein showed us how space and time are actually interdependent, and the fact is that the faster you travel through space, the slower you travel through time, and vice versa. Essentially, the faster you go, the closer you are to the speed of light, the slower time moves for you. This is not that intuitive for us anymore, but this has been proven. There's a famous experiment that showed this. There are many, but one of the famous experiments showing this was flying a clock around the world and then comparing it to the same kind of clock on the ground. And what scientists found was that, yes, in fact, the flying clock will gain time with respect to the stationary clock on Earth. Now, this is not just physics that has been proven. This is also something that you and I are using these days on a regular basis every time that we use the GPS on our phone. The apps that we're using, they're actually using a technology that relies on those time differences between how time passes on Earth and outside Earth in outer space, as measured by the satellites that our GPS components are using. And so this is just an example of how these findings and laws of physics are actually something that we are using all the time. So Einstein showed us how time and space are connected and they're actually one thing, but he still saw space-time as being fundamental, meaning like that fundamental stage on which everything in reality happens. Now, for the past few decades, some physicists are starting to say that space-time is doomed. This is not an expression that I came up with. You can Google it. Google space-time is doomed and you'll see for yourself. This is sort of a catchphrase that some physicists, not all of them, but some of them, are subscribing to today. And essentially what they mean by that is that space-time cannot be the fundamental layer of reality. There has to be something more fundamental to explain reality than space-time. The person you're watching on this slide, the photo of the that's in front of you, is not of some new agey quasi-scientist. This is Nimar Kani-Hamed. He's a leading theoretical physicist at Princeton University, and he's one of the leading figures in quantum mechanics that is discussing this issue, that space and time cannot be fundamental. So why does he and others like him are saying that? As I already said, this is not a physics lesson. I'll just give just an example to kind of give you some context on why this is being said by some scientists today. So what you're looking at here is this is a map showing where more or less the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, is located. This is somewhere around the border between France and Switzerland. And the Large Hadron Collider is basically the largest experiment ever built on planet Earth. This is 27 kilometers in circumference, 500 feet underground. There's 10,000 scientists working on this from 100 different countries. And what they're doing essentially is they're smashing particles at each other at enormous energies. They actually reach 99.9% of the speed of light using this device. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this reflects a reality in the laws of physics, which is that in order to probe, to explore reality at smaller and smaller scales, we need higher and higher energies. That's why they had to build such a huge construction in order to achieve the energies required to smash particles and explore reality at such a small scale. Just to give you a picture, 10 to the minus 8 centimeters is roughly the size of an atom. 10 to the minus 16 centimeters is the scale at which they research in the Large Hadron Collider. So theoretically, the more energy we can generate, the more we can probe reality at smaller and smaller scales, right? So we could just build the larger Hadron Collider, like something even bigger than what there is today, smash particles on new, smaller scales, and then we can just continuously explore the smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller scales of reality, right? But it turns out there's a certain limit, because what physicists found is that when you run this in theory, something really strange happens. Because in order to explore reality at very small scales, we have to use more and more energy, right? So it turns out that there's a certain point, there's a certain scale called the Planck Scale, which is 10 to the minus 33 centimeters and 10 to the minus 43 seconds. At that level, which is called the Planck Scale, it turns out that you have to condense so much energy into such a tiny region of space and time that you create a black hole. And a black hole means that it becomes impossible to see what happens there, to probe reality there. So this leads scientists to a very weird conundrum here, because in other words, what happens at the Planck scale is that time and space have no operational meaning below the Planck scale. You can't research reality, at least not with the same paradigm, when you get to the Planck scale, and that means that time and space begin to stop having any meaning below that scale. Now, another thing that challenges the concept of space-time as fundamental is quantum entanglement. Just 2 years ago, in 2022, the Nobel Prize in Physics was given to 3 scientists who proved that quantum entanglement is in fact real. Now, what does that mean? That means that particles can influence each other instantly, even if they're separated across vast distances. So imagine that you have a particle right here on Earth, and then there is another particle on some far away, let's say the Andromeda galaxy, and then you do something to the particle on Earth, and instantly it affects the particle in the Andromeda galaxy. Now, that has been proven experimentally. The fact that this is possible and is actually a reality on the quantum level. That is what the physicists received the Nobel Prize 2 years ago. But in short, what it means with regards to space-time is that entanglement suggests that there might be some non-local connections that transcend the boundaries of space and time as we know them. Now, that leads us to a real question. What is the true nature of the physical world, this physical reality where we experience time and space? What is the true nature of it? After you kind of get this scientific context of all those findings from physics, you can begin to understand why some scientists say sometimes things that sound very unconventional. This is John Wheeler. He's a leading physicist from the previous century. He made significant contributions to gravitation and quantum mechanics and other things. This is the guy who came up with the term black hole. He coined the term. And he says this: every item of the physical world has at a very deep bottom an immaterial source and explanation. This is a quote from Sir James Jeans, who was an English physicist and mathematician. He also made important contributions in areas like quantum theory and stellar evolution. He says this: "The universe looks more and more like a great thought rather than a great machine." Now, Kabbalists have been saying this all along, that we are in fact living in a thought, what could be described as a single thought. They call it the thought of creation. Let's read this quote from the great Kabbalist of the previous century, Baal HaSulam, who wrote the commentary on the book of Zohar, which is a 2,000-year-old text that is a seminal text in the wisdom of Kabbalah. So he wrote this: "A single thought emanates and creates the whole of reality, both upper and lower, in its final state of the end of correction. That single thought performs all the operations. It is the essence of all the operations, and it is the purpose and the essence of the labor. It is by itself the very perfection and the sought-after reward. As written, one, unique, and unified." All right, so this is some deep text here, and essentially what it says is that all of reality, from beginning to end, even though it appears to us as something that occurs over time and in space, all that is happening in time and space is included in that single thought. And so if we are indeed living in a single thought, then what's our physical world? What is time, space, matter? We definitely feel all those as real, and they're very intuitive to us: time, space, matter. And Kabbalists are saying we're living in a single thought. So what is this physical reality of time, space, and matter? And so, from a Kabbalistic point of view, the Kabbalists say we were as dreamers. That means that our entire experience of reality, what we call the physical world, including time, space, matter, and everything in it, is a kind of a dream. Now, if this is just a dream, then who is dreaming up this reality? Or in other words, if we are not these particles, these physical material particles that we think we're made of, right? If that's not what we are, then what are we? So, we feel like a material body that exists in physical space, but that is a kind of an imagination, Kabbalists tell us. Here's a quote from my teacher with regards to that. "The body does not exist. The body is a kind of an egoistic character that we imagine in our consciousness. It is depicted inside our desire. So this means that we are purely emotional beings. We are non-material, emotional beings. We are not a body that has feelings. We are emotional entities that experience feelings, and one of our feelings is that we feel like we are a body. The thing that we're actually made of is non-material substance called desire. It's a desire to be fulfilled. That's why we all want to be happy at the end of the day. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, or what you define as happiness can vary greatly. But ultimately, if you're a human, what you ultimately want is to be fulfilled, to be Happy is to be fulfilled. And that's because we are a desire. And so this desire feels itself right now like it is a body in a physical world in time and space. But we are emotional beings that are imagining this reality based on our emotional experience of reality. And so that takes a while to sort of embrace that perspective. But I encourage you to try to do so, because that will really help you understand the next bit here, okay? Where we're going to talk about where this all comes from. But try to really take a few seconds and take that in. So what we are is a desire, the will to receive, the desire to be fulfilled. Here is what Barasulam writes about this. The will to receive is the whole substance of creation, from beginning to end. All created beings, all their innumerable instances and conducts that have appeared and will appear, are various measures of the will to receive. This is fundamental in the wisdom of Kabbalah. What I'm telling you now is really the basics of the wisdom of Kabbalah, the foundations that are critically important to understand anything that the wisdom of Kabbalah talks about. This is why Barasulam writes about this in one of his introductory articles, The Essence of the Wisdom of Kabbalah. It's right there. It has to do with the essence of the wisdom that talks about, all that it really talks about is a reality that is perceived within the desire, beyond what we think of as space and time. So what we hear from this quote is that everything we see in reality, all of the creatures and all the different forms of life and planets and the sun and the moon and the ants on the ground and yourself and your feelings and your body and everything that you can possibly think of, these are various measures of desire. Desire is the will to receive, the desire to receive is the one substance of creation, the one thing that was created. And everything that exists is a certain layer or value or measure of that will to receive. There's nothing else in reality. And that means that time and space must also be phenomena that exist inside the will to receive, inside the desire. So time and space, they are emotional dimensions that are felt inside the will to receive. And this means that the question becomes, why is the desire dreaming up this physical experience, seemingly physical experience of space and time? All right, you're with me so far? So all there is a desire to receive, and for some reason, the desire imagines its existence as happening within space and time. And we want to understand why. Why is the desire creating this rendering, this picture of a physical world with space and time? To answer this, we're going to have to understand what happens to the desire in the complete thought of creation. What does the desire go through? And there are three main steps or states or stages that the desire goes through. In the very first state, we call that state in Kabbalah Ein Sof. Ein Sof also means no end or infinity, if you want to say it like that. And that is referred to as the first state of creation, the first state of the desire. In that state, there's nothing besides just one single desire that exists, and it is completely fulfilled with non-material fulfillment that we refer to as light. It's a non-material fulfillment, meaning that it is devoid of any physical shape or form. It is just a quality of oneness, a quality of love, if you will. And that quality of the light is the fulfillment that fulfills the desire entirely. So there's just one desire that exists, no differences, no disparities, and there's one light that completely fills it. That is the first state of creation. Let's hear the words of the great Kabbalists, the Ari, written about 500 years ago, when he wrote a poem that discusses this first state of reality from his spiritual attainment, of course. So I have a short clip with these words of the Ari describing the first state of reality. Let's watch it.
But all was...
Sorry, that was a little technical bug. Let's watch it right now.
Behold, that before the emanations were emanated, and the creatures created, the upper simple light had filled the whole existence. And there was no vacancy, such as an empty atmosphere, a hollow, or a pit, but all was filled with simple, boundless light. And there was no such part as head or tail, but everything was simple, smooth, light, balanced evenly and equally, and it was called the endless light.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that. That was part of the Ari's poem written about 500 years ago, describing his spiritual attainment of those higher states of reality. And so in that first state of creation, the first state of the desire's existence, in that state, there is no space and no time. And that's because there are no disparities. There's no separation. All that exists is oneness. And so in that state, the desire is so immersed in the fulfillment, in the light that fulfills it, that it doesn't feel itself or the fulfillment. There's just no distinction between them. You can think about it like an example that Baal Sulam gives, like a candle in a torch. In other words, if you think of the light of a candle inside a bigger flame, is it really there or is it not there? Or you can also think of an embryo in a womb. On the one hand, there's definitely something there and it exists. On the other hand, it has no consciousness of itself, no independent existence. To this day, we have a big argument about when can you really call an embryo alive, right? And Brings up a lot of argument in our society. But bottom line is, we were all once an embryo in a womb, and we don't remember any of it, right? Why is that? Because in that state, there's just no consciousness. And so that's the state of the first state of creation. The desire is completely immersed in the light. It doesn't distinguish itself or the light. And so in order to develop independent consciousness, that can only happen through some form of separation from the light, distancing from the fulfillment, the light meaning that non-material fulfillment in the first state of creation. So in order to develop a distinction between the desire and the light, there has to be some separation. There has to be some disparity, some inequivalence between the desire and the light. And separation, we're talking about a non-material reality. So separation is not a matter of physical distance. Separation is a matter of opposite qualities or opposite emotions, if you will. And so that leads us to the second state of creation. In the second state, the desire has to change and become opposite to the light in order to be away from it and become conscious. So this separation from the light culminates in something that Kabbalists call the shattering. That state, called the shattering of the vessels, or the shattering of the desire, the shattering of the single vessel that exists, that shattering means that instead of feeling oneness, now the desire has to feel shattered to many, many, many pieces. Instead of feeling in adhesion with the fulfillment, with the light, now it has to feel like it lacks fulfillment. It is away from the fulfillment. And this is where time and space come from. The sensation of time originates in our loss of adhesion with the fulfillment. Think about it. Even in our world, when you are immersed in pleasure, you lose the sense of time. Time flies when you have fun, right? When you're in pain, time stretches. So that's just an example from our world, but that is essentially what happens in the spiritual state as well. From the moment that from the point where that the desire is shattered and it lacks fulfillment, that creates the sense of time. And also, due to the shattering, all those pieces of desire, they don't recognize that they're one. So we feel many, many differences and distances between all the elements of nature, the still, the vegetative, the animate, the human. All of those levels of reality appear to us as separate individual things that are separated by space and time as well. And so that is a result of all those pieces of this desire not feeling themselves as one. That's where all of this emotional dimension of space comes from. What's formed between the pieces is something we call in Kabbalah aviyut, or coarseness. And that essentially becomes what we later know as egoism. It's like a thick kind of envelope that, or a bubble that envelops each piece of the desire to receive, making it feel individual and separated from all the others. And so that sense of separation between the pieces appears to us as the sensation of space. Now, the goal of the shattering is to allow the pieces to develop their conscious connection on their own, and then consciously discover that they're eternally connected. And so bit by bit, we grow our connection between all those pieces to cover all of space and all of time, if you want to put it that way. And that emotion of covering all of space and all of time to such a connection that is eternal between different pieces of the desire, that quality, that emotion is what we call love in the spiritual reality. So love is also not, how we treat that word and that idea in our world is really far from it's at the end of the day, any kind of depiction of love that we have in our world is egoistic love. We love something or someone because they give us pleasure. And even though there is some similarity, it's only as a kind of an example, meaning even the greatest love that you feel in our world, it's a kind of love, sure, but it is limited. It is still relying on the material experience of this world. And so it only gives us a sample, an example of what it means to achieve spiritual love, eternal love, non-material love. So ultimately, this entire physical world will simply evaporate from our senses, if we're talking about the complete attainment of the thought of creation by all of the pieces of humanity, all the pieces of the desire. We will recognize that we were as dreamers, as the Kabbalists recognized. And so we will wake up to a reality of eternal love between all the pieces of the collective desire that was created, the single desire that was created, and we will feel bonded with the force of love, the force that created us, the light. And this is why love raises us above space and time. All right, at this point, I'll move on to some questions. I hope that there are some here, and if you have more questions now, definitely go ahead and send those questions in, and I'll do my best to answer them. I'll mention again that some friends, Linda and Ruth, are helping me behind the scenes here to collect all your questions. So if you asked something throughout the session, I should probably be able to see it now. And if you have more questions, just go ahead and send them into the chat. So Daniel asked earlier, what is this thing we call a thought? Garrett Bossman also asked a similar question. Where does that thought, I guess you're talking about the thought of creation, where does that thought come from? Who thinks that this thought? Okay, great. So I'll talk about thought and where it comes from, as well as the thought of creation. So what's a thought, right? Our intuitive understanding of a thought from our experience is something that I can think about, right? Something that exists within me and is unseen by other people, unless I share it with them through words or other external means of communication. Something that is unseen, it exists within me, and it is the driver of possibly my actions and behaviors and so forth, right? So that is kind of our intuitive understanding of a thought. From a Kabbalistic perspective, a thought for us, created beings, a thought means the plan of the desire to receive to fulfill itself. So we're all made of desire, and we have all kinds of desires within us, right? even if you think about it in very simple terms, we have desires for food and sex and money and honor and power and other things. But more or less, this is kind of it. And these desires, they want fulfillment. Our thoughts are like servants of these desires. Our thoughts are the plans of that the desire makes in order to get its fulfillment. So I want money, I come up with a business plan, right? I want to eat, I'm thinking about what food can I order, right? This is just a simplistic example, but you get the idea. So thoughts are like the plans of the desire. Now, when we're talking about the thought of creation, we're talking about the thought, the plan of the upper will, the upper desire, the desire that created our desire. And that desire in Kabbalah is referred to the Creator. Its quality is a desire to bestow, to love, to give love, to provide, to create a created being and provide it with the same feeling of love that it has. So when we're talking about the thought of creation, we're talking about the Creator's plan. And when we talk about the Creator in Kabbalah, we're not referring to any kind of a man sitting on the clouds with a long beard handing out punishments or candies to people. That's not how it works in Kabbalah. When we're talking about that word, the Creator, in fact, in Hebrew, the word Creator is Boré. And it's a combination of two words, Bo and Re, which means, in translation, come and see. Meaning, for Kabbalists, the idea of the Creator is the deeper layer of reality that I have to come to in order to see it. That's what the Creator, Boré, come and see, means from a Kabbalistic perspective. And that deeper layer of reality, that deeper level of desire that holds, sustains, and guides all of creation, that is a desire to bestow, a quality of complete and unconditional love and bestowal. This is where the thought of creation, the plan to fulfill this desire to love and bestow, this is where it comes from. So everything that happens to us in life, everything that happens to the desire to receive that was created, including its creation and its shattering and its reconnection of the pieces, but this time in complete consciousness, all of that plan, that thought of creation, comes from this desire to bestow and to love, this unconditional quality of bestowal. That is the quality that we refer to as the Creator in the wisdom of Kabbalah. It is the creative force, the force that creates, sustains, and guides all of life. Okay, I hoped that gave you an answer. With regards to thoughts, I see some more questions here. Is there an existence that pre-existed this one? This is from A. Ron. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Is there an existence that pre-existed this one? How does that realm interact with this realm? Okay, that's a very deep question. At least the second part of it. The first part of it, yes, there is a realm, that an existence that is beyond and it precedes, if you will, our existence, our material existence. But it's not that it happened before. The non-material reality that is the foundation of our reality, it exists right now. We are in it. right now. It's not that we need to fly somewhere or go somewhere through some portal into the spiritual reality. And it's like in a different place. The spiritual reality is all around us. It's what we experience right now, except we experience it, we perceive it in a broken way. And that's why it appears to us as time, space, matter, the physical cosmos. We think about it as physical, we think about it as happening in time and space, but this is just our broken perception, our limited, reduced, and shattered perception of the spiritual reality. All right? So that's in essence about the relationship between the non-material realm and the physical realm. There's a lot of depth in terms of the connection between those spiritual roots and corporeal branches. That's how we refer to that in the wisdom of Kabbalah. There's a lot of Kabbalistic texts about roots and branches, and there's a lot of explanation about that. You can probably find some material about roots and branches, which will be about what you're asking, on our channel here. This is also a good opportunity to mention that, wait, I got a slide here to help. Yeah, there's a course that one of my great friends and Kabbalah instructors, fellow Kabbalah instructors, Gianni, has produced. It's called the Emergent Universe. And if you are on KabU, or if you register to KabU, then you can check out this course. It's called the Emergent Universe, and it goes deeper into some of the things that we're discussing here. So maybe that could be interesting for anyone who's interested in these topics. KabU is something that anyone can try. There's a free trial as well, so you can find the link in the description, and I think my friends will also post it in the chat right now. So you can go ahead and check that out. Check out KabU, and as part of a KabU membership, you will get access to this course as well as a bunch of other interesting courses you can explore. So that's with regards to Ron's question. Let's see if we can take another one. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it. Gilaya Gadisa. Hopefully I didn't butcher your name. You're asking, so separation or shattering as a result of lack of equivalence of form, we are seeking and sensing which we are different than eternal peace and love. I'm not 100% sure that I understood your question correctly. If I have, then you're asking essentially if we are different from that reality of eternal peace and love that we're looking for. Yes. If that's the question, the answer is absolutely yes. This is something that, to be honest, might take a while for a person who starts studying the wisdom of Kabbalah to internalize. We are made of an egoistic substance. Our entire perception of reality is built in such a way that we can't perceive anything unless we see it as about to give us self-benefit. It is utterly impossible for us to come out of this perception of self-benefit. It's a program that guides all of our desires and thoughts, and the spiritual reality exists outside that thought, outside that program. The spiritual reality is a reality of love for others, thinking of others and wanting good for others and loving others. That's what the spiritual reality, this is the foundation of the spiritual reality. Or in other words, it's the program that operates everything in the spiritual reality. And so that's okay that we're far from it. It's okay that we're opposite to it. That's meant to be. That's part of our development. our spiritual development starts from a tiny point of desire, somewhere in our desire, among many desires to receive for ourselves. We have a tiny little dot. We call it, in fact, a point in the wisdom of Kabbalah. And that point is sort of like the seeker point within us. We call it the point in the heart. It's a point that looks for the spiritual realm, the spiritual fulfillment, connection with the light, connection with the quality of unconditional love and bestowal. We're looking for it, but it's a very tiny desire within us. And that's why if we want to develop spiritually, if we actually want to develop into that spiritual realm, we have to grow that desire. We have to make that little point very, very significant and present in our consciousness, in our life, in our mind and heart. We have to increase that point that yearns for the spiritual, and it has to be present within us, and we have to grow it and develop it. I might as well just tell you that the best opportunity to do it is in an environment with other people who have the same kind of unique, special point within them, this unique desire. Every human being has it at the end of the day. All people have it, but it's dormant. It's asleep. It's barely seen. It's under the surface in most people. The people who come to the wisdom of Kabbalah are typically people in whom that point has risen above the surface. It came out and began to evolve. When that point develops in the person, that person feels that spirituality is important, that the spiritual world is something to be discovered, that there's some quest that I'm drawn to go into. I want to explore the meaning and purpose of existence, the meaning and purpose of my life. When a person feels that, that's an indication that this desire we call the point in the heart, that desire for the spiritual has begun to evolve. And when you put that desire in an environment with other people who have the same desire, that's when the magic happens. That's where your little desire, your point of desire, can begin to feel its connection to other points. Remember, we're all one shattered vessel, and discovering spirituality is actually discovering our existence in that collective network of desires. That's the spiritual reality. That's where we are. We already are in this reality, but we don't feel it because we're only centered on our self-benefit, our self-interest. And that creates this illusion of a body within space and time. And so if you really want to grow your desire for spirituality and make that really happen, you need an environment. That's why we have KabU. It's not just an education center that teaches you lessons. It helps you build that environment around you. It puts you in an environment where you can actually practice this growing of your spiritual desire in connection with others. And very soon we have a tremendous opportunity for anyone who wants to really experience spiritual development at a high intensity. If you're interested in that, you should know about the event that we're going to have very soon, in about a month from now. Wait a second, let me put a slide about this. Here we go. So the 3-day leap is the KabU retreat. Basically, we have 2 such events a year, one in Europe and one in North America. These events are for any one of our KabU students, but also for people who might not even be KabU students yet, but are interested in the wisdom of Kabbalah. So that might be you. I don't know. I mean, this broadcast is watched by sometimes KabU students and sometimes people who are watching our channel, but not necessarily studying in KabU yet. This kind of event is an amazing opportunity for everyone, students and beginners alike. It's so the coming retreat is going to happen very soon, in about a month, May 31st to June 2nd, in a beautiful nature resort type of place in Holland, the Netherlands. There's also a reason why we do it in nature. You'll find out everything if you'll be interested. You can find all the details and tickets at retreat.kabuconnect.com. This is a really good time to check this out if you're interested, because there's also an early bird discount. So definitely look into that. I think there's going to be a link. Yeah, there's a link in the chat, so this can take you straight there. All right. I do have to conclude. Let me see if I can maybe take one last question here. Sandy is asking, how can we hasten the process to rebuild the desire into one and bring all these pieces together? First of all, Sandy, beautifully said. That's exactly what we want to do. And I don't want to repeat myself, but the best way to do it is what I just said, exactly that. Find these opportunities with like-minded people, with like-desired people, with people with the same kind of desire in their heart, people who want to achieve connection with the spiritual, connection with the light, connection with the quality of love. And together, we can follow the Kabbalistic texts and the experiments and practices that Kabbalists left us as a way to rebuild that desire into one, to bring the pieces together. That is essentially what we do in any Kabbalah gathering. We use the texts and the instructions from the texts to work on our desire for spirituality, and use our desires for spirituality as an environment for every one of us, as an amplifier for each of the participants. And that's why in a retreat setting, like I just described, you can really, really feel it very, very powerfully. By the way, this retreat that I mentioned, let me show it again. It is both a physical event and a virtual event. So if you have the opportunity to come to Holland on May 31st to June 2nd, that'll be amazing, and that is probably the most powerful way to experience the event. But if you can't, you can also participate virtually. So there's a virtual ticket as well, if that's how you can participate. So check that out as well. Again, retreat.kabuconnect.com. That's the URL. All right. At this point, I'm going to have to say goodbye to our viewers here on social media, but I am continuing to a Q&A session with the KabU students. So if you are a KabU student, you should have the link to the Zoom session in your email. You can also find it on the KabU website. If you're not a KabU student and you're watching this and you'd like to continue to our exclusive Q&A session, then you can go ahead and register for KabU right now. Again, there's a free trial, and if you register, you'll be able to join this Zoom as well. So I hope I'll see all of you there. And this has been a delight. Thank you very much for watching and for sending questions. Sorry I couldn't get to all of them, but I will do more Q&A right now in the session on Zoom with the KabU students and anyone who wants to join. So hopefully see you there. Till then, all the best and bye-bye.